Good evening, friends. Welcome. So delighted you're with us. Okay, I think I was rolling and forgot to hit the second button. I'm so sorry. So I've been rolling along and nothing's been happening, and I'm so sorry, but we're going to start rolling again now. I just got too excited, to be honest with you. I'm just super excited about what we're doing tonight and where we're going tonight. And it's also, this is so important. I don't know if you saw the news today. See the article from the New York Times, the guy who founded Patagonia, the amazing outdoors clothing, high-end outdoors clothing stuff. He was a rock climber, and he started this company just because he wanted to make good gear, and it stuck and it caught. And now it's a $100 million a year company. He's ready to retire, and he decided instead of selling the company for the estimated $3 billion, he, his wife, and his adult children decided instead to give the company basically to a trust that they set up, and that trust will work on climate issues, and it'll work on land conservation issues, and the roughly $100 million a year that Patagonia makes will go to that. People are thinking about our world. What does it mean to be a human? They're thinking about the droughts that are happening, the floods that are happening, the storms that are getting worse. They're thinking about the technology that we're developing, and these questions of what's it mean to be this unusual creature of a human living in this created world? What does that mean? And how do we do that? And they're thinking about that afresh. It's right in the front of their minds, especially for young folks, the questions of where's all this going? How's the future going to play out? I mentioned in my email, I've been invited into this group. We're reading this book called The Ministry for the Future. Ministry for the Future is not a church book. It's an international ministry similar to the UN that gets set up in this futuristic book. It gets set up to try to prepare the world, to sustain the world for future generations to come. It's a mind blower. Some of it I love, some of it I don't know, but it's a really worth getting your imagination into and reading book. And we're in this group, and they're bright folks from all over the country. And then there's me tagging along, and we're discussing this book, talking about it. And this wonderful sister in the Lord who's out in Berkeley, a place sort of like Boston where you got a lot of super bright technological stuff going on. And she says, I'm struggling a bit. Wonderful, honest, vulnerable moment. She says, I'm struggling because for the first time, I'm wondering if we've run into something that our faith and its resources and our scriptures may not be able to help us with, that it may not give us what we need. I want to say it's there. We have the opportunity to re-see the story, and to see the story that the scripture has always told that maybe we haven't had lenses for. We have the opportunity to clean those lenses and to start to see more of the role, if you will, of the non-human creation and how that plays in the story. And we have the opportunity then, perhaps, what if the question changed? What if the question for the body of Christ was no longer, do we have the resources, but rather, what if it was, hey, how can we let the world know that we have something to offer that's both real and also is more than utilitarian? It's real. It works in the real world. It takes the realities of the world seriously, but it's also more than utilitarian, and it has a future and a hope. So we're going to walk through some of this. I've goofed up a bit of time, so my apologies for that. Stay with me. This is big stuff. It's God and the cosmos. You can't get much bigger than that. We're going to walk through the four big, broad strokes of the brush of the scriptures. Some of this you've heard me say before if you're with us at Trinity. Some of it I haven't been able to get to. It's all part of the same story. So those bits you have seen before, just go, oh yeah, I got that, and let it refresh for you. But hold on till we get into the other bits as well. And then we're going to take a little break. We'll take a breath after each of the four sections, and then we'll take a little break, and we'll come back with someone who's part of our family at Trinity, who this summer had the opportunity through a couple of wonderful experiences to begin to connect what's it mean to be body, mind, and spirit in createdness in beauty and wonder, and connect that to a relationship with God and to communion, really. So we're going to walk through those things, and it's well worth it. First thing, the first move is the beginning. Beginning, a story of wonder. Now, the biblical creation story, especially, well, the both of them, chapter 1 and 2, they're complementary. They're separate complementary stories, and they are myth, if we understand myth in the positive sense of the word. Not that they aren't true, but they are stories that take, fit around and want to talk about and give space for everything, to be an enclosure to hold everything. They're unique in that they're also epic, meaning they are story that goes somewhere. In the ancient Near East, the times in which Moses lived, in which he wrote and told these things, in that time, the other creation stories did not have this same kind of positive, wonderful aspect. In the Genesis story, the refrain that echoes through chapter 1, the sort of cosmic creation story, is, "It is good." God is creating what the theologians call ex nihilo, out of nothing, just for the joy and wonder and goodness of it, just out of self-giving love, because he wants to. There's an English theologian named John Milbank. John Milbank says, the Trinity shows us that relation is substance. God creates because he relates, because he wants to relate to more than himself, and he creates for that purpose. And that is an act of love, of self-giving love, opening himself up to relate to others at cost to himself. It's a wonderful story right off the bat. The other stories in the ancient Near East, let's just sample two of them quickly, and you see how you can't really build a happy ecological ethic out of them, because they are sort of like, I don't know, uber utilitarian, like utilitarian times, squared or something. One of them, two gods fight, one god kills the other. He's got the dead carcass of this one god, and he says, "Hey, what do I do with this? Let's make a world." It's sort of an afterthought of what do you do with a dead carcass. It's not a really happy thing. A dead carcass is rotting from the start. The other story, or another story, one of the others, another of the stories, there's a godlet in a swamp, sort of like a cosmic frog kind of, you get the feeling of. I don't mean to insult it, but you get this sort of strange feeling. It's not terribly glorious. And this godlet is pleasuring himself, and out of that he forms the world. No relation, no other, no connection, no epic, no story. It's incomplete. There's a mystical and a mystical loss. The biblical story starts off incredibly affirming and positive. It is good. It is good. We are created, and when we are created, the seventh "it is good" is spoken, and that one is, "it is very good." We are truly and humbly created. We're part of the creation. Adam is simply a play on the word Adama, for the clay, for the stuff of the earth. So we're the humus. The human is formed of the hummus, the humus, earth humus stuff. And we're clearly on that side of things. And yet we're created in God's image. And because of that, we then are given, yes, we're given authority, we're given dominion, we're also given responsibility, and we're told to be stewards. So all those things that we're given to act in God's stead, and we're given to act in them in a way that he is trusting us, and he, the artist creator, wants us to carry on in those things in his character. And the language around that in chapter 2 is to guard and to keep. It isn't, the word sustainable doesn't show up, but the idea is implicit there. The realm that's created, the world that's created, is not passive. Agency is given to it in a mystical way. Everything that's going on is at some level mystical, because this is a epic myth story compressed into tiny little space. So everything that happens in Genesis 1 and 2, super important. and meaning something bigger than itself. So there's agency given to the creation. There's a sense of, to the creation, here's life, here's agency to you. Go and thrive in your own kind. And that's an amazing thing that happens. The second amazing thing that happens that's so affirming of the non-human creation is that it's given authority for ongoing life and goodness. The first two things to be given titles are trees: the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Trees, you've heard me say this before, trees wonderfully, they feed on light, they feed on glory, they reach up to the sky, they worship and praise figuratively and more than figuratively God. And two of them in this story are the first things given titles and the authority that goes with titles. So this is amazing. There's so much going on here, and it's incredible. Now, we all know, so take a breath. That's the beauty and the wonder, and so much good there. And then we all know what happens in chapter 3. The party gets spoiled. What happens then? I want to say two big things happen. Again, totally writ large. God moves to limit the damage or to staunch the bleeding. And he, in doing that, then he also, second thing, he begins to sort of skip over us. We're his stewards. He doesn't give up the right to relate directly to his non-human creation. He skips over us, and he and the non-human creation start to work together over against us, if you will, to try to push us back in line. So, super quick. God staunches the bleeding. He does this in the law, in the wisdom literature, and in the prophets. In other words, broad strokes of the brush, in the Old Testament, God staunches the bleeding. You'll find a spot, this is all in Leviticus, Leviticus and Deuteronomy. You'll find a spot where God says, when you besiege a town, you can cut down the trees that you need to cut down in order, if you're in war and you're besieging the other people's town, and if you're committed to doing that, you need to do that, you're going to do that. Well, you can cut down the trees you need to make siegements, but you can't cut down fruit trees, and you can't cut down any other trees as well. This is not just utilitarian, because the next little comment is it against the earth that you are at war? So long before any ecological crisis could even possibly be imagined, there's so few humans on the earth, and the planet is so big, and the wild beasts are so big, and all the rest. Hear these ideas that there's goodness inherent, and there's something more than simply utilitarian going on. In Leviticus, the land is given Sabbath every 7 years, and then supremely every 7 times 7 years, the land and the beasts, the domesticated farm beasts, are given Sabbath. In the wisdom literature, we're told that the human who fears the Lord respects his beast. We're told in the Psalms, C.S. Lewis points out in the Psalms that there's this sense in the Psalms amongst these agrarian people, there's this sense sometimes of nature cavorting. Again, even though they're, agrarian people, they have to hope that the land will work for them. They're working the land. They're working with their beasts day in and day out. That can be hard work, and it can be pretty tough. And the wonder sometimes goes out of trying to get your mule to plow that field. But Lewis says, nonetheless, they can see something. They see that there's something there beyond the utilitarian. Job, the book of Job. Crazy mystery that Job is even there. The book of Job, the question gets raised, how can God be both good and powerful and all these evil things still happen? The answer that's given is the question, were you there when I did this? Isn't it amazing? So the wonder of creation is reaffirmed, the whole project, and it's the answer. This is good. So lots of great stuff going on. The prophets then, the land, sometimes we get these mystical, amazing statements. Because of your sin, the land weeps. Flip side, when there's renewal, the land will rejoice and sing and be incredibly fecund. So there's even in the Old Testament, even so far before any kind of ecological crisis as we would understand it today, whatever you want to think about. If you want to think about global warming or pollution or species diversity loss and the need for conservation of habitat and that sort of thing, whatever issues you look at, long before any of that stuff's on the table, there's this wonderful stuff in the scriptures about how we are meant to relate and how God uses the non-human creation in his relationship with it to try to get us, who are supposed to be the stewards, to wake up and see our role. And that happens, that second thing happens. And the dominion we're given, the language on that changes after we mess it up. We presume upon that. We act on that in a way that is not respectful of God, and then dominion, the way that language is used, changes to reflect more of a tyrant. And that won't get sorted out until the Liberator comes, and we'll see that in a minute. But there are lots of, you can think of these, you can come up with a bunch of them once you get the lens on. The drought leads them to go to Egypt. They don't know that that's something or it leads them, rather, it leads Joseph's brothers to come to Egypt, and that allows the story to connect. They don't know there's something bigger than that going on, but there is. The earth swallows the wicked in the Exodus, those who are determined to try to undo the thing that God is doing. The earthquake consumes Sodom and Gomorrah. Elijah and the drought, and then Elijah goes and the ravens care for him. Elisha and the bears, Balaam and his donkey. There are all these little moments where you realize that there's maybe only just one human who will do the thing that needs doing. So God raises up the non-human creation to help that human. God and the non-human creation working to try to get things sorted back out. Or there's no human really who will do it. So God gets the non-human creation to act on his behalf and to do it. The ravens feed Elijah, who's I guess Elijah's trying to do the right thing. The donkey speaks to Balaam and says, hey, come on, get yourself sorted out. Here's a good one from 2 Chronicles. Nebuchadnezzar took into exile in Babylon those who had escaped from the sword. They became servants to him and to his sons until the establishment of the kingdom of Persia, to fulfill the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah. And here it is, get this. Until the land had enjoyed its Sabbaths. All the days that it lay desolate, it kept Sabbath to fulfill 70 years. That is a remarkable thing. The people, in essence, are waiting for the land to be given the Sabbaths that presumably it has been stripped from in their evil behavior. And it's the measure of when exile is enough, according to this bit from Jeremiah, is that the land needs its Sabbaths. There's so much respect for the land and the non-human creation that's built into that. Okay, take a breath. That's our second big move. Third big move is the Liberator, nature's revenge and release. The human being, Adam, the first human being, the one representative of us all, causes Adam and Eve, our primal foreparents in the story, they caused the problem. The second Adam, the second human being, is then sent to solve the problem. John Milbank again. The Trinity shows us that relation is substance. The incarnation shows us that substance is relation. The wonderful paradox there. So God becomes human to reset the whole thing, to reset the whole affair and to satisfy, amongst the many other things that he did, to satisfy our debt to nature. So forgiving sins is not a small thing. Opening up the way for the new heaven and the new earth, not a small thing. He is also taking on our debt to nature. Think about this. Jesus comes. Stars announce his birth. He's born into what is probably a cave. He is a seed of new life. He's baptized, though he has no sin. The water over which the Spirit hovered to make life, He's down into that water. The Spirit comes and hovers. It's a moment of new creation. He's driven by the Spirit out into the wilderness. Mark tells us that he's out there with the wild beasts. This is Adam in chapter 2 of Genesis, naming the beast with the beasts in the wilderness. He's out there in the wildness, and he is recapitulating all of creation. He's then tempted by the cynic, the Satan, the one whose name means the cynic and the accuser. He hates the whole creation thing. And he just wants to kill, steal, and destroy. He wants to wreck it. So the first temptation is, you're out there in this rocky, deserty kind of place, and Jesus is fasting and he's hungry. And the Satan says, hey, turn a stone into bread. I mean, there's a million of these stupid things out here. And Jesus won't do it. He hints at something we might call creational integrity. God made these stones to be what they are, so we're going to let them be. We're going to leave them be. Later, Jesus enigmatically will say, if you won't praise me, the very stones will cry out. Of course they will. They love him. Good heavens, finally somebody dignified them for being what they were supposed to be. Jesus is comfortable outdoors. He has no home. He's like the beasts that have no place to lay their head. He goes out alone frequently to pray into the wild areas. Just somehow it's easier there to connect. It's more direct. He had a common place, a place he would commonly go in a garden. Take note of that. That's important. Jesus had amazing authority in his life with humans, certainly. Also with nature. He says to the storm, peace, be still. You don't need to fight me. I'm here to rescue you. I'm the liberator. Peace, be still. His attitude towards Sabbath and food. He has authority. He resets our relationship to the earth. Jesus then gives himself to die. He gives himself to die because of what we have done, and to voluntarily give himself as a sacrifice in love to pass through, pay the way, make a new way, give a new blood that we can get as kind of a blood transfusion and get new life in us. He dies on the cross. The cross, in this mythical, more than mythical way of understanding, the cross is a tree. The cross might be understood as the tree of judgment. Nature gets its revenge, not on Jesus, but on us through Jesus, on Jesus in the sense that he stands in for us. So on us, because we deserve it. We're the ones who got nature cursed in the first place. So Jesus goes, dies on a tree, nature gets his revenge, and yet, because he doesn't deserve it, the sun goes dark, the earth quakes. He's raised by the Spirit of God, and the tree of judgment is turned into the tree of life. He's raised, and he's mistaken by one who sees him for being a gardener. Mary Magdalene turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not know it was Jesus, supposing him to be the gardener. Chesterton says, on the third day, the friends of Christ, coming at daybreak to the place, found the grave empty and the stone rolled away. In varying ways, they realized the new wonder. The world had died in the night. What they were looking at was the first day of a new creation, with a new heaven and a new earth, and in the semblance of a gardener, God walked again in the garden, not in the cool of evening, but in the dawn. There's all this wonderful, fantastic, mythical, great stuff, mystical stuff that's going on, that God is interacting with his non-human creation. And Jesus becomes the liberator and the one who gives nature its revenge and its release, which leads us then to the fourth big move. The fourth big move is a future and a hope. The earliest followers of Jesus talk about him in cosmic terms. John, in the first chapter of his gospel, in the beginning, same little beginning as of the whole of the creation story in Genesis. In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him. Without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Colossians chapter 1, the Christological hymn, it's called. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. By him all things were created in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. All things were created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. So, again, as ever, in these Way of Love things, I apologize. We're squeezing all this stuff in. We're trying to get lenses to see things that that have always been there in our scriptures, in our faith, and maybe we haven't seen them, and we're trying to get the lenses. So I hope you can get the feeling of what an amazing thing it is to live in this created, beautiful, good world that God has made, and how much he cares about us and it, and how we all relate together with and in him. Two last huge things that happen here in the New Testament. One of them, as you all know, is Romans 8. Romans 8, I consider the sufferings of this present time not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed in us, for the creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the children of God. And then he says, the creation was subjected to futility, but it is in hope that the creation itself will be set free and obtain the glory, the freedom of the glory of the children of God. He talks about the creation yearning and groaning for this. So again, no ecological crisis. This is incredible mountain peak, this incredible peak of a mystical statement that Paul's making. Flip side, Apocalypse of St. John, the Revelation, chapter 11. The nations raged, but your wrath came, the time for the dead to be judged, for rewarding your servants, the prophets and saints, and those who fear your name, both small and great, and for destroying the destroyers of the earth. God made it. He loves it. He cares about it. He's going to redeem it and set it free. It yearns for this. In some incredible way, it yearns for this. And our role is to live into being the body of Christ, learning how to be who God wanted us to be. We live in this world. We act as his stewards. We create culture, but we do it as his stewards in a way that's sustainable, and we do it in a way that's spiritually rich and profound. And all these dots connect, and the effect is greater than the sum of the parts or anything that we can figure out. The effect is greater than anything we'd be able to sort out. In chapter 22, the end of the Revelation, the tree of life, 3 times the tree of life is back. The tree of life bears fruit for the healing of the nations. The tree of life is there, and there's incredible glory that happens. So take a breath. We're going to take a break in just a minute. Take a breath, get caught up, recognize there's a lot to digest. Just cleaning up the lenses. Once you get the lens, you read your Bible, you go, hey, wait a minute, look at that. Never saw that, never noticed that. Wow. And stuff starts to pop off the page, and that is super, super good. The best resource I know, last thing, and then we'll take a break and then have our guest. The best resource I know for a spirituality around this stuff is Pope Francis. I think it's his second encyclical, Laudato Si. And that is a place where basically what he does, he basically says, all of this stuff comes from the emptiness of the human soul. The way we mistreat the world, the way we try to fill ourselves up with plastic junk and all the rest, it all comes from the emptiness of our souls. he basically connects the dots to an inner life with God and a life of prayer that allows us to turn that corner and to love and serve. So it's profound and it's wonderful. All right, friends, thank you so much. Thanks for walking with all of that. Such good stuff. So we'll take a break for, say, 5 minutes, and we'll come back with Jennifer Drummond and catch you all in a few minutes. Okay, friends, welcome back. Hope you had a lovely break. So, Jennifer, welcome. Jennifer Drummond, thanks so much for being with us. I think you might be muted. Give it a shot. Hold on a second.
There we go.
There we go. Awesome. Hey, you can't possibly goof up as bad as I do. I wish I were smart enough to be as airheaded as I am. It's like, I think to be this airheaded, I should be like a genius, but I only seem to have gotten half that equation somehow. So anyway, so for those who don't know, I rolled along for like 13 minutes and I was killing it. My word, it was awesome. I had all this energy. I was completely fired up. And Michael's texting me. It's like, what is going on? And I'm like, why don't you leave me alone? I'm trying to go here. And then I finally realized that I hadn't hit the right little button. So there it is. But hey, you didn't seem to have those troubles. Here you are. And
here I am. That's good.
Here you are. Awesome. So Jennifer, thanks so much for being with us tonight. For those of you who don't know, Jennifer is part of Trinity, and she's a trained spiritual director. She's also one who helps our Way of Love. She leads the leaders for our Way of Love home groups. And Jennifer and I were chatting about this month's Way of Love, and she was saying, I had I had an experience this summer that happened for me right in my own backyard, literally, and really connected to some of this. So Jennifer, if you would just kindly share that story with us, and I'll mute my mic over here and look forward to hearing you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. No problem. I am glad to be here. I'll even give you a little more context. This started back in December, January. Actually, Ian and I got tattoos on our wrist, and mine says, I can see it. It says love in beautiful cursive writing. And I was thinking a lot about, there's all these trendy things you can do, like, choose a verse for the year or a word for the year. And I decided I wasn't going to be trendy. I was not going to, jump on some kind of bandwagon. But we got these tattoos, and I was thinking about it, and maybe that's a good word, well, that's kind of vague. What would that be? And then like a week later, you sent an email and said, hey, we're going to do this thing at the church called Way of Love. And I was like, the word has chosen me. I felt a little Harry Potter-ish there. Like, okay, all right, this will be a good word.
There you go. Awesome.
Yeah. And one of the questions that came up as I was sort of pondering all this initially was, what's the relationship between love and hospitality? Can you be one without the other? It's like, that was an open question for me. And then we started and we did the Way of Love throughout the spring. And it was wonderful. It was completely my language. It was all internal stuff. What's your relationship with God? What practices are you doing? How are you connecting with God? And it was great. And as spring unfolds sort of slowly and through mud season, I began to tinker in my backyard. And I started to get some pretty plants, and I was like, oh, that's kind of pretty. Oh, well, all right, over here. And at the same time, my mom, this is a very strange thing, my mom began raising monarch butterflies down in Florida. And she was telling me all these things, and I thought, well, that's weird. Fine for you. I don't know if I want to do that. But one of the plants that was on sale at Home Depot was milkweed, which is a monarch. The only plant that monarchs can eat and live on and create their chrysalis and do their thing. So I got a milkweed. So I'm beginning to pay attention to my backyard. And I also put up some bird feeders. And I thought, well, I wonder what's going to happen when I put up some bird feeders. And so as spring sort of slowly turned the corner, into the beginning of summer, which June is my favorite month in New England. It's like the most glorious, the most beautiful, the most everything. I was having these, and this June was really lovely. There wasn't too much rain. Well, now that's a problem. But it was like weeks of like beautiful weather. And as you were talking earlier about trees feeding on glory, I was having these experiences of sitting in my backyard in the early morning, which isn't too early in the summer because the sun is up and you can come out and see it. And it was like I was witnessing something otherworldly. It was like I'm seeing the dawn come up. I'm seeing the trees unfold, like literally day after day. The leaves are getting water. The branches are branching out. They're feeding on glory, as you said. I didn't have that language at the time. But now, as soon as you said that, I was like, I was witnessing that happening. My milkweed is growing. And all of a sudden, there start to be birds in my building. So here I am sitting in my backyard, and I'm thinking, I think this is what shalom is. I think I'm in it right this minute.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was like God said, yes, you are. This is creation doing what it is supposed to do. And you're doing what you're supposed to do, which is sit there and be part of it. And I was thinking, well, why do I get this? Why did this happen to me? How do I have this space that's really beautiful and something else at the same time? And so I had that thought, and then I said, well, let me ask God that question directly. Because in spiritual direction, we often say, have you talked to God about that? So I'm getting better at saying that to myself. Have I talked to God about that? No. Why do I have this space in front of me that is beautiful and that you are here and I'm literally watching, like you said, metaphorically, but also actually, like the dawn is happening, resurrection is happening.
Right.
I'm in communion in this very strange place with these birds and this plant and the trees. And what came to me, what I think that God was nudging me towards was, this is a gift. You did nothing. But you were cultivating it all spring. And I thought, well, I guess that's kind of true. And I guess I sat out here and paid attention.
Yeah.
I guess I put some effort into the plants that I put around. And I guess I'm having these thoughts and having a conversation with God. Okay, all right. So that was sort of the first awakening or the first moment where I was like, I think something really awesome is happening right now. It was really cool.
I love the fact that you're doing something so simple in a way that isn't simple another. It's so simple. You're sitting in your backyard, but you're noticing you've got space, you've got soul space, you have just the ability to see it and connect the dots. So in a sense, it's super simple. It's your backyard. But in another sense, it, like you're saying, it's connected to everything and God's there. And it comes from being able to connect those dots and realize this is gift. And, and this is communion, and this is God meeting you in the space. So did you get butterflies at your milkweed?
So yes, that was part of the stories. They were in a certain spot, and I noticed that it wasn't doing as well. So I had to consult my mom and moved it to another spot. And actually, the spot I moved it to is now a butterfly rock garden. So I ended up redoing a whole little space with multiple plants that butterflies like. And this is part of it. As I was creating this new space out of like the little side weed patch, which I didn't like every time I walked by. And I was like, that's such an ugly weed patch for like 5 years. And my neighbor's been helping me. She's been helping me see things differently. And she said, well, you could do something different with that. And I was like, what do you mean? You could take the weeds out and you could put something that you like in there. What about the milkweed? Yes, for example. So we did this whole refresh and reframe, and I was like, oh, that was happening. I was taking the lenses off and kind of wiping them off and going, this could be something different than I did. So in that new space, then I was doubly attentive. And in fact, I did see several monarch caterpillars. And then there was a little swarm of other moth caterpillars, which was like a whole text thread with my mom. What are these caterpillars and what do they do?
Nice.
Really fun. Yeah.
Nice. Good. Hey, can I ask, this was June, right?
Yeah.
So in June, the sun here comes up super early. And I know because I'm always waking up, hearing the bicyclers go by on the road out front and thinking to myself, gosh, I bicycle and that sounds like a lot of fun. Someday I should get up that early and go with them. But I never quite managed it. So how much of an early bird are you out there in June?
Well, I'm a 6 a.m. sort of early bird. And so I'm pretty consistent all year round. So in June, the sun is definitely up by then. It's rare to see it tip over. Well, I like doing that because then in December, when I get up at 6 a.m. and it's completely dark, that's the time to bring out the Advent wreath and all the candles. And there's a completely different experience of what's happening around me. Like, nature is still quiet at 6 a.m.
Yeah. Right. So I'm looking forward to hearing how your experience of waiting and being in that space, open to the Lord, seeing what He's doing. I look forward to seeing what that's like this autumn. What kinds of things you see and what you notice, and so on. But you shared that as you were there, then you're noticing the butterflies. You're working in the refreshing the garden space. Enjoying all that, being in the garden in a sense, and then you had some other guests that you shared communion with as well.
So I live in Asbury Grove, which is a Methodist summer camp, and a lovely place to be. And the highlight of the season is Camp Meeting Week, which is a series of revival type preaching and teaching, and very exciting. And this year, the speaker was Dr. Sean McDonough from the seminary, which was exciting because that was one of Ian's favorite professors. Yes, we're definitely going to go see him. And his whole week was the book of Luke, and the theme was the welcome of God. And so as I'm pondering and experiencing and sitting outside and seeing what's going on in the non-created world and the sun and the trees, I'm then hearing and reading scripture and like, I'll be darned if these don't line up pretty nicely. The whole book of Luke is like God's welcome to us as humanity. God's in all the parables and stories are about, this is what God has done for us. This is how God invites us to His kingdom, to His table, to His feast, to be together, all of these things. And the sort of climax of that was actually he referenced Scrooge and the Christmas Carol. And he says, all right, Scrooge had this encounter. And the minute he wakes up from this encounter, he's like leaping like a giddy schoolboy, and he's throwing money at Tiny Tim. And he's buying the goodies, It would make zero sense if Scrooge was like, I will go back to the bank and count my money. Good thing I learned that lesson, right? Right. And it's kind of like that's what happens when we encounter the real welcome of God. And it's like, wait, is that what's been happening? God has been welcoming me by meeting me in my backyard in my butterfly garden.
Yeah.
And it was like this whole new vista opened up.
Right.
And it's like, what on earth? Now what? And we had part of this is we had some new deck furniture, and it was like, man, we're sitting outside and it's like, we're sipping a drink and we're enjoying this. And one weekend Ian was gone, and I was like, well, who am I going to share this with? Who am I going to sit outside now and watch this sunset? So I texted my friend and I was like, you think your husband would watch your kids and you can come over and sit outside with me in my deck chairs and we can watch the sunset and have a drink? And she was like, I've never gotten an invitation like that. Yes, I will be right there. And so she came over and we chatted for like 3 hours because the sun went down and it was like, where did that come from?
Yep.
Well, oh my gosh, did God just open up the doors of hospitality like through me in this way?
Right.
And it was like, I think he did. I think that just happened. It was really cool.
Yeah.
And it was like, I don't think I could have thought that up or like planned to do that.
There's something even in the simplicity that makes the satisfaction that much greater.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. It was really spacious. I mean, it was a beautiful setting. It was a beautiful night. The sun was down, but like it wasn't a meeting. We didn't have an agenda to cover. We didn't have things we were complaining about. It was just like, isn't this nice?
Yeah.
Cheers, and it was really lovely. And it was like, God, and even through that, my friend sent me a text later and was like, that was the nicest evening I've had in a while. And it was like, through that hospitality, God was affirming to me, like, this is what I do for you. Like, why don't you sit down with me and watch the sunrise or watch the sunset?
Yeah. There's another lovely Chesterton quote. I didn't find it for tonight, but I've heard it and read it before. And he says that even though even though God is ancient, beyond ancient, he's also younger than us. And he says the reason that the sun comes up every morning is because God says, "Do it again." He loves it so much. He says, "Do it again, do it again," and he never grows weary of the wonder of it all. And I love that. It's such a good story. Something fresh in that, something that in that St. Francis or in that Pope Francis kind of way, connects the dots, connects to the soul. That's the Sabbath moment, a timeless, full, happy, connected to in garden, and that is a big part of what we, the people who are followers of Jesus, have to offer in the midst of this. Is there are a lot of other things that people need to be doing as well, and we should be a part of that. But this is a big piece, a simple piece for each person, but for the soul that we can offer. Offer it because it's good and joyful and given to us as gift, and we want to give it to gift to others as well. So the other thing, let's wrap up with this. I know that I think Jennifer, I think you have a gift for writing these prayers. Jennifer shared with me some collects. Collects are prayers in liturgical worship that are meant to collect all of our spirits together, our thoughts together, our hearts together, and express a unified message that we can all bring, a unified praise and call out to God that we can all bring to Him. And so you shared that you've been writing some collects around just as you've been sitting and seeing. And I think it'd be lovely if we just close our time tonight with a couple of your collects. So would you pray a couple of those for us?
Sure. Sure.
Thank you.
I'll pick two. Oh, I thought I had them in front of me, but I'm in this. Okay.
All right.
This one I actually wrote when I was on retreat, but it applies to our yard as well. God of the wild turkeys, those giant creatures puffed up with pride and the need to protect. Help us to see our own iridescence and ridiculousness without the need to swell in self-defense. For you provide their daily needs and are trustworthy to provide for ours as well. And then this other one, I think this is a good transition into our next, the spring we've been talking about the internal, and now we're going to be talking about moving outwards. So this one I think helps us. God of the woodpecker, bright red tufts atop nail-sharp beaks. Those whose work it is to hammer in high and hard places. Create in us a bright longing for justice and the zeal to throw ourselves into the work you have given us to do, because we find ourselves and you in places of work.
Those are lovely. Thank you. I think you have a gift for that. That especially that bit. I love what you did there with the wild turkey and the iridescence and the pride and the good and the goofy in that. And so those are really, really nice. So thanks so much for sharing tonight. Thanks for being with us, Jennifer. And friends, thanks for being with us. Peace to you, and go in peace to love and serve the Lord. Good night.
Amen. Good night.